We had grass was greener on the other side.
Grass on the other side, yeah, yeah, cool. You guys ever hear the one, they fight like an old married couple?
No.
No, you've never heard that one. Nodding over there. You know, that's one that I've heard my whole life, and usually it's two people who are close, right? It's, you say that about two guys, especially if it's two guys, it's more funny to say about them. But it's two people who are tight, who care about each other, who know each other well. You know, I think one of the things that God has been showing me and just kind of working through in my life is this idea that a lot of the times as I go on my journey, the hardest people to share it with are the people that I'm close to. Because I think the truth that's captured in that saying is that sometimes we have the hardest time communicating and opening up with and just getting real with the people that we're closest to. You know, I know for me that's true. When I look back at the way I started Engage, you know, I showed up on a Saturday morning, didn't really know what to expect, sat with a couple guys. You know, Richard, who had, I don't think he's here anymore, but he had the really nice hair. And, you know, we had Paul, he was a little bit of a city slicker. He had like a camel hair coat. And John the beer man. And I could sit down with these guys. And I remember when I first showed up, man, for me, it was shallow. I didn't want to open up. I thought I had my life all together. And I didn't. You know, when I show up on a Saturday morning, things were good, and wouldn't really open up that much, and yet, you know, say my life is good, but then I'd go home and, you know, I had sin that was hidden, you know, pornography and fantasies and anger and all this stuff. But as I kept showing up with those guys, you know, those guys and some different guys, and you know how Stephen rearranges stuff, and God started to chip away at that. He started to open it up and bring my secrets out into the light and started to deal with them and started to change me. He started to bring me along on this journey. You know, he started to draw me close to him. He started to break me of the control that I held so tightly on in my life. You know, that was what it was for me. But he started to move me. I started to see movement in my life. I started to develop relationships with a lot of you guys who are sitting in this room right now. We started to, you know, park or go hiking in the mountains or go run rivers or whatever it was, and I could be open and I could tell you guys about what was going on in my life, and it just felt easy. It was like natural. I could pray with you guys. I could open up at these tables, and no matter what it was, I felt like I could just talk about it, and it was great. I loved it. But at the same time, the person who God put in my life, who I was the closest to and still am, my wife Jill, she was the one that I had the hardest time telling about this journey, bringing along on this journey, letting her see how God was changing me. You know, it felt like we sit down here, I don't know if you guys can identify with this, some of you I know can, and talk about it, and God would do something amazing and Engage, and I'd go home and I'd be all ready to tell her about it, and it was like, she just wasn't interested. You know, the thing that was so amazing, I get home and I start talking about it, and it just didn't seem as amazing. Or there were nights when I get home and she'd had a rough day and I'd run off to Engage, or she'd had to wake up alone on a Saturday morning, which she just does not like to do. And I'd come home and it was, you know, well, you just ran off with your guys and ditched me, and so I don't really want to talk to you for a couple hours here. You know, and that frustrated. That got to be frustrating. Can you guys identify with that, though? I mean, I know for some of you guys, you're not married, so maybe it's the kids, maybe it's the whoever you're closest to, and I want you to think about it. You know, the conversations that you had with them, the times that you looked at that person who you care so much about, whether it's kids, maybe it's girlfriend, fiance, you know, maybe it's just the guys that you're closest with. But you look at him and you're thinking, you know, God is doing this in me, and I love it. And I love how he's changing me, and I want to bring them along with me because I care about them so much. I want them to see it. But it just seems like it's hard to do. You know, that's where the hard work is. And I know for some of you guys, you know, you've been doing this for a long time, and you've done that. And you can say, you know, if we go around this table, it's one of the things I want to talk about, is that, you know, this is not easy to bring the ones that we love, that we care deeply with, along with us. A couple weeks ago, Stephen talked about, he was up here with a kiddie pool. I'm literally sitting on top of a table with a kiddie pool. And he talked about how in our journey we come to this point where it's time to get out of the kiddie pool, step into that river, eventually move towards the deeper parts and swim towards the ocean. And God will take us on these journeys. And last week, Joe talked about how reflecting on our engaged journeys, what God has been doing in us as part of this group, and how much that's meant to us, and inviting other men into that, into our journey here. And so this morning, I want to look at another facet of it. I want to talk about the people that we care so much about, that we care deeply about, and especially guys, I know a lot of us in here are married or have kids, our families. Or maybe it's, moms and dads too, wherever you're at. But it's how do we bring them along with us? How do we take what God is doing here, and how do we invite them into that and take them along on our journey? And so I want to start out and tell you guys a story about a guy in the Old Testament who did that and what it looked like. And it was Joshua. He's the guy who had Moses and Charlton Heston from the movie. He stands strong. He takes people out of Egypt and he leads them through the desert for 40 years and he gets to the brink of the promised land, and God says, no, Moses, it's not on you to take them into the promised land. It's on this guy Joshua. And so Joshua leads the people in, and if you remember the story of Jericho, and he leads them all through the land, and they conquer this land that God has given them. And it's God goes before them and fights for them. And they don't just conquer the land and drive everybody out and in fact slaughter everybody in the land. God makes them do it in a way so that they will know that God is responsible for it. That it's His journey that He's taking them on. Kind of like our journeys. God is responsible for it. But at the end of his life, as he's getting ready to wrap up here, Joshua gets all the people together. And he walks them through, all the way from the time of Abraham, all the way through conquering the land. And he gets them together, and this is what he says to them. This is his closing statement, and Woody says this a lot of time. I think it's true. The last thing that you say to somebody, if you're a parent, my parents told me the last thing was put the milk in the refrigerator and the cereal in the cabinet, because I was known to switch those up. Because the last thing they say to you is of most importance. And so this is what Joshua had to say. Make sure I get the right verse here. Now fear the Lord and serve Him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. That's his closing. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. I love that because I can identify with that. I can identify with looking back on this journey that God has taken me on and saying, for whatever it is, and I see a lot of the guys and whatever it is, wherever you want to go. But as for me and my family, I want us so badly, and me and my wife, and eventually someday my kids and my parents and the people I care so much about, I want us to serve the Lord. But then the rubber meets the road. Because I've done that. I did that. Get so amped up about it here and be like, yes, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my wife along with me. But then you go home and it's not easy. It's not easy. But I learned a couple things along the way. And I learned them from some guys who are a lot wiser, been doing this with their wives and with their families a lot longer than I have. And so I wanted to set out a couple principles for us this morning, just kind of camp out on and think about. The first one is I can picture Joshua standing up there. He's the warrior, he's got his staff, and he's saying, me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And the first part of that is the me part. It's the commitment of us saying no matter what happens, whether it's, the people we care deeply about don't want anything to do with it, or at least they show that, or whether it's time consuming or it's tough, no matter what happens, I'm going to serve the Lord. I'm going to commit to and maybe it's showing up here every Saturday and just being open and honest and letting God change us. But the first part of it is we have to make that commitment to say, no matter what happens, God, I will say yes. I will let you change me. And then the second principle. The first one is commit. And the second one is to let them see it. That's the tough part. We're guys, and that means the good and the bad. Because God just doesn't do lollipops and candy for us. He's going to take us and He's going to refine us. He's going to put the fire to us. And sometimes it's not pretty. But we have to make that commitment, to commit to letting that, to being part of that process, and then to being vulnerable and letting people see us. You know, I know for some of us that's looked different. For some of you guys, you go home and it's, here's the questions, honey. Here's how I answered them. You know, sit down with your kids and kind of gather up and go through the questions, talk about what we talked about. You know, Stephen puts up every week, he puts up those videos on YouTube. You know, this video will be up there by Monday night, and maybe if it's tough to talk about what we talked about here, you sit down, you watch the YouTube video. You know, whatever it is, but it's making that commitment to live your life out in a way and let them see it. And then the third one, and this is the one that is absolutely the hardest. We have to trust that God will do the work in them. God did the work in us. You know, God drew me in. He drew you in. He's taken you on this journey. We can commit. We can let them see it. We can encourage them. We can be with them every step of the way. But He's got to do the hard work. We can invite them along on our journey. I can invite Jill along on my journey, but I can't push her. I can't force her. Sometimes I feel like I want it worse than she does. I want it for her worse than she wants it. But we have to trust that God wants it more than we ever could. And we have to trust that. And guys, I'm a fixer. Now I can look around this room and we got a lot of fixers in here. We have to trust that God is the fixer. He will change hearts of the people that we care about most deeply. And again, this is not easy. You know, I look back at my journey, and again, this is through my context of with my wife. But it's looking back at that first year of engaged, and I was moving but getting frustrated, and after about a year or so, I just got sick of having to do this balance of she wants my time, yet engaged takes my time, yet it just feels like she's not coming along on my journey, and I don't want to leave her behind. And so I started to kind of pull back from this group, from Engage. And for summer, I just didn't go. I thought, I'm going to pull back a little bit. I'm just going to focus on spending quality time with my wife. And I'm not going to kind of commit. I'm going to step back on that commitment of pursuing God with you guys together. This thing that I've learned is so important. And I'm going to try to bring my wife along so that eventually, we can start out and we can do it together. And it didn't work. By the end of that summer, I was in a worse place with the porn and the fantasies and all my other little sins and everything, and it just felt like it was amplified because I had checked out, unplugged from you guys. And so at the end of that summer, I just made a commitment. I said, this isn't working. What I'm doing ain't working. And so I said, I'm just going to start showing up. I'm going to start saying yes. It was that commit part. And I guys, I had no idea what that was going to turn into. And it turned into a whole lot more than I ever thought it would. But at that time, I remember just saying, God, I'm just going to show up and be open with you guys at the tables, open about what I'm really, really struggling with, and I'm going to let God change me. I'm going to invite God into that. And it's been amazing. As God started to chip away at me and He started to change me, He started to do the same thing in my wife. And as I let her see that, another part of it was, I just said, no matter how awkward, no matter how weird it is, I'm going to let her see it. I'm going to talk about what God is doing, and I'm going to do it persistently. And it was weird, and it was awkward, and it was tough. But I did it, and after a couple months, God just moved. He did the work. And it was Shay getting up on her story and telling her story, Shay Foster, and she and my wife have very similar stories, and God just flipped a switch there. And I can remember after a couple weeks, and she'd done women's group a couple times, and afterwards she and I got together and we were talking after Monday nights, and it was so clear what God was doing, and He was starting to move in us. And I remember just sitting down and saying, honey, we have done this our way for so long, no matter how hard it is, this is what we have to do. We have to pursue God in community together. And that was our time of coming together. And it was amazing. Since then, I think, I look at it, and there are times when I know my wife loves God more and is closer and is more receptive to Him than I am. But for me, it started with the commitment. There's the vulnerability. And again, this is my context through marriage, and I know a lot of you guys, it's kids and other things. And so I wanted to just get somebody else who I really respect and love to come up and tell his story about his kids and what that's looked like with him. So Steve, if you want to come up and
just listening to Aaron speak, it just set this mic here.
Oh yeah.
So listen to Aaron. I really like the way he broke that down, and just kind of a flood of memories, started going through my mind about my life with my kids. And I have 3 kids, been divorced most of their lives, so that thought of seeing me telling them about God and my journey, and then them seeing me act, they're with you all the time, so they really do see the good and the bad. And so you wonder how much of that is really sinking in, Man, it was so important to me. It's like Aaron was saying, I feel like I want it more than my kids do, for them to be close to God. So I just want to share this one story that really kind of stands out for me in this. And we're driving to my father-in-law's and his girlfriend's 80th birthday, and up in Maryland. And we're just driving from here. We're going up 29. And my oldest son, Nick's front seat with me. The twins, Amber and Joe, are now 17, are sitting in the back. And Nick's been in Virginia Beach for about 2 years, and he came back, and you could see he's been a little bit distant from God. He's had a lot of time on his own, not such great roommates and all that kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, I hear from the back seat his younger brother Joe say, "So Nick, where are you with God?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm just sitting there driving, and Nick starts saying, "Well, I don't know. I guess I really haven't felt all that close." And Joe's like, well, what are you going to do about that? And he says, "Well, I don't know." Nick said, "I've been here with you, and kind of feel like getting reconnected here, and maybe, this is what I should do." And they start engaging in this talk, and then Amber chimes in, and she starts talking about like where she is with God. And here I am driving along, and my 3 kids are having this God conversation in my car, and I'll tell them about where they are and who God is to them. And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus, thank you." What I'm trembling right now. What an experience for a dad. You really don't know sometimes if what you're saying is sinking in. You really don't know if your life has been that example that you want it to be. And to hear them sharing with one another, encouraging one another about a life with God, I tell you guys, whatever it's worth putting in, and as Aaron said, God's the one doing the work. We just got to play our part. We just got to speak up. We got to show him and let him do it. Thanks. Yeah, that's right. Forget that part.
Yeah, guys, that's what God's heart is for us. It's not that He just takes us on this journey and we go out and do it, but that we bring along our families, the people that we care most deeply about, with us. And I think it's got to start with us. We have to commit to doing this in a way that's effective. For me, for a lot of you guys, I know it's this community. And then we have to let them see it. We have to be vulnerable. We have to be open, the good and the bad. We got to invite them in to just let them see what it looks like. Let them see what God is doing in us. And then we got to trust that God's going to do the work. And if we're receptive, we might get to be a part of that journey. And that's awesome. Like Steve said, sometimes we just get to sit back and watch it happen. Yeah. But we have to trust that God is going to do the heavy lifting here because He wants to. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. We're going to talk about, for you guys who are identifying with this, I want to talk about what's the next step. Now, who is that person? What does it look like in the past? What are the struggles there? And then this week, going forward, how do you start to invite them in on your journey? For you guys who have been doing this, and I know I'm looking around here, I'm seeing some of you guys, you do this with your wives, with your kids. What does it look like? Let's share here. We've got a whole bunch of generations here. Let's start to pass that on. A whole bunch of places where we're at with our walk with Christ. Let's pass that on. And let's encourage each other. And let's talk about what are the lessons I've learned. How do I do it better? And this week, what am I going to do to bring my wife, my kids, whoever is that person that you care so deeply about, along with you this week? Okay? Guys, I just want to wrap up and kind of cast a vision for why is this important. We talk about it of bringing people along on our journey, and whether that's people that, and for some of the guys at our table, it was like, our wives, they're farther along on our journey than we are, but we can still share that with them. We can still share our journey with them. This isn't about who's farther along. This is about us making this commitment, being vulnerable to whoever it is that we care about, and then letting God do that work, and trust that no matter where they are, us making that commitment, us moving towards God, He's going to use that in their lives. So why is that important? It's not just for us. And I want to read you the next part of the story of Joshua. After he gets all the Israelites together and his kind of closing statement, me and my family, we are going to serve the Lord. And this is what happens next. So after Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to his own inheritance. And the people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua, and the elders who outlived him, and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance, at Timnath-Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim near Mount Gash. After that whole generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation grew up, who knew neither the Lord nor what He had done for Israel. And then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they served the Baals, which were the foreign gods of the land that Joshua had warned them about. And they forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the people around them, and they provoked the Lord to anger, because they forsook Him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. The reason we do this, the reason that we don't just take this and keep it in here with us guys, the reason that it's so important that we invite the people who we care the most about on our journeys, is because we need to pass this on. Because if we don't, it stops with us. Just like with Joshua. If it doesn't get passed on to our kids, it won't just affect, us. It won't just affect our kids. It'll affect our grandkids and their kids. Yeah. This is a responsibility that we have, that God has gifted us with. These relationships, these people that He's put in our lives that we care so much about, and that we want to take with us on our journey. And we're doing it because God has given us responsibility to do it. And so that's what I want to send us out with, of just saying, this is a huge responsibility, but we take it one day at a time. This week, me and my family, me and my wife, me and my kids, me and my mom, me and my dad, me and the guys in my dorm, or whatever it is, say we're going to serve the Lord. And that starts with me, that I will serve the Lord, and I will let the people around me see it. And in that, God is going to work through that, and He's going to move, and He's going to bring them on a journey. So we're going to be faithful to that.